Quite often I get students asking me how to achieve this double exposure effect. So I thought I'd make a tutorial and take you through my process for getting to an image like this. Now, you've probably seen this all over the place. I see them on Behance all the time. Generally, it's a portrait on a white background with some sort of nature or other sort of environmental image superimposed or double exposed into that profile. So let's get started, and I'll show you how to create something like this. So the first thing we're going to do is open up this image of Vinny in Photoshop. So I took this shot of Vinny in the studio against a white backdrop. So we should be able to get a nice clean selection out of Vinny. Now, in the past, we've done things like we've used the quick selection tool or, magnetic lasso, God forbid. But there's a much easier way, or I think much cleaner way, when you have a nice dark object or well-defined object on a white background for getting a really great selection. So first thing I want to do, I'm just going to go ahead and unlock this layer because I know I'm going to want this layer to be unlocked later. So with that unlocked, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the Channels tab. Now, there's a good chance you've never gone into the Channels tab, at least not on purpose, and you've probably clicked these things and then realized you've messed up your image. What this shows us is the RGB, the red, green, and blues all together. Yes, that's what our image looks like, but if I turn that off, or turn these off, if I turn off the red channel, we can see what it looks like with just green and blue. When I remove one, that's what we get. But when we see one by itself, we can see just this black and white image. Now, the thing is if we were to look at these individually, like green versus blue, there might be more contrast in one over the other from these darks to these whites. And I think blue is probably where it's at, but I wanted to go ahead and make sure I checked. I don't think it's red. Now, red looks like it has the least amount of contrast. So we'll go with blue. With that figured out, I'm going to go ahead and grab blue and drag it down here to the New Layer button and make a copy. With that copy made, I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and Levels. And we can see our histogram here. Now, our whites, we don't go all the way to white, so we really need to make our whites totally white. So I'm going to really bring this in here to this highest value white in here. It's really important that we make sure our background is totally white. And I'm going to grab the black slider and then just sort of really start cranking this up here. The object here is to create a totally black object on a white background. Now, that might mean that we have to move our whites back as well. Maybe our midtones have to come closer this direction. And we'll kind of crunch all this down. Like I said, it's important that we make sure our background is white and our subject here is completely black. Now, I think we're doing okay. It looks like our edge is pretty clean and we're not doing anything too crazy with it, so that looks good. From here, we're going to hit OK. Now, we didn't get everything, so we need to kind of knock out the rest of this using just a regular brush. So I'm going to grab a brush, make sure I have black selected, and I'm going to come in here. I'm going to use a larger brush. You could go up here and you can adjust the brush size. You can do things like right-click. Control and Option on a Mac, that's really the best thing to do. I just hold them down and I drag left and right to make my brush larger or smaller. Hardness is up or down. I'm going to go ahead and make this brush pretty, with very little feather, or if any at all. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to paint out these white spots in here. Get the chain, pocket watch right up where it's the edge. I'm going to get in here and get this hand and the face. So I'm going to come in here, my brush, and just take care of those areas. Adjusting my brush as I go, as needed. This is going to be that'll be good enough when we get going here. Get these spots in the thumb. Let's come up here, see if I can find it and do this the hard way. Yeah, we're going to go to the face. Smaller brush. Be easier if I had my tablet, but you're going to be doing this with the mouse most likely, so why should I complain? Kind of clean that up here. Get rid of this. And definitely this sort of specular spot on his head. Let's knock that out. There we go. Zoom out here, looking pretty good. Oh, let's get rid of this chain. All right, there we go. Awesome. So we've got that done. Now, once we have our nice contrast with our image there, and we've got that totally not silhouetted, let's go ahead and hold down Command or Alt and click on the thumbnail to select that image. Now we're going to go ahead and go to Select and Inverse to make sure we just have this. So we're going to select an inverse to make sure we just have him selected. And we're going to turn the RGB back on. Turn that blue copy off and go back to the Layers tab. From here, I'm going to copy and paste that and create a new selection based off of this layer here. So to do that, all I have to do is hit Command-C and Command-V, copy and paste. Copy and paste with that selection made. You can see right here, we have pasted that image in and we have a completely transparent background. Once we know we have that, I'm going to go ahead and fill this old background layer. Fill that with white. You may see that as foreground or background color. Just change that to white and then hit OK. So now we have a white background and Vinny knocked out here. So let's go ahead and bring in our cloud layer. And this could be whatever you'd want it to be. But in this case, I have these clouds I shot off the back porch this summer, so I'm going to use these. So we're going to go ahead and place. Now, CC you're going to see embedded and linked. You probably don't see this in CS6, but I'm going to use place embedded. And grab the clouds here and hit place. Now, it's going to bring it in here as a smart object. Like bring that up, hit enter to confirm that. Now we're going to drag that layer on top of Vinny here. Now we can command click again on Vinny's layer to reselect that selection we had from earlier. I'm going to come to the clouds and I'm going to add a layer mask. And there you go. Just by adding the layer mask, you can see right away we have all those clouds right inside the silhouette of our subject. Now, I can go ahead and unlink the two of these and select the image here and drag it around if I'm not loving exactly where my placement is. I don't necessarily want to rescale it, but, maybe something around like this is something I like. So if we like that, that looks good. Now, we might want to bring some of the details of our subject back in. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate a layer of Vinny again and put him up on top. And with him on top, we're going to change our transfer mode to overlay. I think that's overlay. No, I think we're going to go with soft light instead. Now, I don't want to just leave it like this. Really, we're going to go with soft light. I think that's where I want to be. Great, with soft light done, now we're going to go ahead and add a mask to this as well. But I'm going to hold down Alt as I create this layer mask to create a inverted layer mask where it's black. And then I'm going to paint in with white. I'm going to grab a nice big brush here with nice softness on it. And I'm going to come back in here and I can sort of hit in some areas maybe that I want it to be visible here. And maybe our opacity needs to come down too. Maybe we don't want it to be super opaque here. Maybe some of the details from his suit. I don't know. But if you want to, just keep inverting the brush and drawing in the parts that you want to. Maybe we do want to have a little more opacity here. Come in here, we're just going to paint around with this and figure out what it is we want to see that's visible. Maybe it's not much at all. Now maybe we see this and we're like, well, we don't like where that background is. Now I can always come back down here and with it unlinked, kind of move it around and see if we can't find something we like better. Maybe something like that. Oops, the bottom of our image. If I scale it up a little bit, it's not going to hurt anything. There we go. I can come back here and just keep playing with my masks. We talk about masks all the time, and it's because we need to. They're really important we use them in just about anything. If you're going to do non-destructive Photoshop work, you're going to have to use layer masks. There's just no other way around it. So you can just kind of paint in and out where you want this to work. Okay, well, I think that that's good enough for now. I don't know if there's anything like that we want to bring in back in down here. Maybe just a hint of that chain. I don't know. Probably not. Maybe just a little bit right there as it comes in. Just a little bit of that like dimension there. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. You can just kind of play around with what it is that you want to do. So if I'm happy with that, there's a little more I'd like to do to this. So let's treat the rest of this image up just a little bit more and give it a little bit more something. Instead of white in the background, let's tint this a little bit. So let's grab our eyedropper or hit I, and we're going to select one of the these yellow hues in here. I think we'll go with yellowish orange in here. That looks good. And what we want to do is let's go ahead and go to that color, and then we're going to make it a much lighter version of a similar color. Now we're going to go to Edit, Fill, and fill with our foreground color. Not bad. Now let's go ahead and add a little more to this. Let's take our cloud layer here, and let's duplicate it and put it on top. We're going to go ahead and select this mask and delete the layer mask. So now we just have the clouds on top. We're going to take this and line it up, or not line it, just fill the image with it. With it here, we're going to go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're just going to crank. It's already cranked. You can see that. We're just going to crank the heck out of that Gaussian Blur. See, it's up so much, it's going off the side here. Let's move it back a little bit. That'll work. Okay, so with that there, again, we're going to add an inverted layer mask. So I'm going to hold down Alt when I add my layer mask, and now we can't see it at all. Go back, grab another really large white brush with lots of feather on it. So hardness down, up even more. And ever so slightly, we're going to start working this color from that background in a little bit. Now, it looks a little heavy-handed right now, I know. But it's okay. We're going to take the opacity and we're going to take it way down as well. But we're going to use just enough of it that it brings in something sort of interesting to the outside of that image. And there we go. That's a pretty simple way to get yourself to that double exposure look. Now it's really only limited by the things that you choose to do and the background and foreground interaction that you choose to create. So just play around with different backgrounds, different foregrounds, and see what works for you. But once you understand the tools, then you're only limited by your imagination. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and we'll see you next time.